Hey guys, today we're going to do the aftermath of COVID and what happens with the steps that you're supposed to think about, take. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. We're going to give a couple of minutes for people to join in. So just bear with us. We're going to get started here just shortly. Hey guys, welcome. If you guys are here with us for the first time with the Chicago RIA webinar, welcome. And we're obviously doing the webinars given the given kind of the circumstances that we all face. If you're not familiar with Chicago RIA does a lot of meetings on different topics related to real estate in the Chicago land area. We have about 10 to 12 meetings on a regular basis, and obviously now we're doing a lot of these on a webinar format. And throughout, from the day one that COVID started, we have always taken the approach that you need to be cautious in the short term, yet you need to be a long-term optimist. So you got to be paranoid in the short term because you have to be very, very supple in terms of how you react to the market throughout this crisis. And then you need to be not reactionary, but you need to be proactive in the approach that you use. Anytime there has been a calamity, there has been an issue, there has been a pandemic, any sort of a thing, there is always an opportunity that comes out on the other side. The question is not if there's an opportunity, the question is, do you recognize the opportunity, and are you somebody that is well positioned to be able to take advantage of it? A lot of talk I've heard on different webinars on different things, and it's about pivoting, it's about all this stuff. The problem is, what are the concrete steps, right? We all know in our minds, okay, what should we be doing? But it's an intellectual conversation. What I want to know specifically is where are we in the market? What is exactly going on? What are the numbers showing? And then how do we react to it? So because of this issue, not just come and say, oh my God, how do I not only basically keep what I have, but how do I take this opportunity and grow? And just understand that in terms of the reality, there are people who are clearly going to get hurt because of it, and there may be some people that are members of Chicago RIA. We all live in the real world. There's a lot of people that own a lot of properties at Chicago RIA. So that just put things in perspective for you guys. We have about close to almost 10,000 members for Chicago RIA, making it the largest real estate association of investors, not just in Chicago, not just in Illinois, anywhere in the country. And the exciting part about that is this, that there's a lot of relevant information because a lot of members are very, very, very proactive. They're in the market. So whenever something like this happens, there's two types of people. One says, oh my God, everything is over, right? And hide. And the other person says, hey, listen, this is the reality of the situation. Nobody likes it. Everybody has to deal with it. How do we come up on top on the other side? Because clearly people will. That's what happened with me in 2008. I was not investing before 2008. When the market collapsed, I started investing, and that has grown to a huge business. So to give you some numbers, we have a group of about 800 people out of the 10,000 within Chicago REIA that is called Mastery. So we work with them on a one-on-one basis to help them grow their portfolio, build their portfolio, do flips, do wholesales. And those people, that 700 group, owns over close to about 9,000 properties, rental properties in the Chicagoland area. So reason I say that and I bring up those numbers is that the numbers that we talk about are very relevant and they are time tested in our market. So the first off, we had done a survey within Mastery to find out from people what happened with collections last month, because there were a bunch of people that I felt was very irresponsible of them that put out a letter and email to their tenants that, hey, if you can't pay, don't pay, right? We're willing to work with you. At a time like this, we want to be compassionate. We want to be mindful. We want to be in a position where we work with people, right? That is the humanitarian thing to do. But I was 100% against telling your tenants that you don't have to pay, because that is ridiculous advice, because you are still on the hook for the mortgage unless you just have, you don't care, your properties are all paid off, it really doesn't matter, you're not off the hook. You may get a deferment, you may get a forbearance where you can delay your payments, but they're going to come due. So I had felt very strongly, and we had suggested this to everybody at Chicago REIA, that do not put that out. We'll definitely put that out in Mastery. Don't send letters, don't say anything. If people call, talk to them, don't necessarily charge them late fees, work with them as much as possible to collect rents and do the prudent thing in today's market. Because of that, what we have seen is about 85 to almost 90%, if not almost all, for a lot of landlords, that rents have been collected, because that is something important to let your tenants know. And the effect of it this month was not going to be as much as it is going to be in the next month. Even if the economy opens up, people are going to lose jobs. Millions of people are going to lose jobs. Unfortunately, that is a reality, that is a fact. Whenever a pandemic happens, the fat gets cut first, then a lot of the people who are even essential to business, if people stay in business, get cut out. Today, a lot of restaurants, every single business is going to be affected. You know, even our rentals, maybe on rentals we're okay, but on the events and all the other things that we do, it's a huge, huge, huge hit, even on the Chicago REIA, and that's just the reality. Now, we deal with it financially. Obviously, we have always tried to, if we teach you something, we try to have our house in order. So in that way, we feel pretty secure. But yet, just realize that's the reality of the situation, and everybody is going to face it. So what we have to do is we have to be prepared. Going into it next month, clearly the rent collection is going to be down. If it's not a matter of if, ands, or but, it is going to be down. That's just the way it is. But today's particular meeting, what we want to talk about is we want to talk specifically some numbers and what is the aftermath. Till now, I had not really talked about the aftermath. I've not talked about, and I don't tend to have this perspective that, oh my God, hooray, there's a great opportunity, or oh my God, everything is over. It's never that way. It's somewhere in the middle. And what we want to start thinking about is what is next? Where is this going to go, with an approach that things will be fluid, they will change, but just anything I talk about today, please keep in mind, this is not going to be in the next 30 days, 60 days, 80 days. It's going to be a 6 month, 8 months effect. And there are going to be some reasons behind it. We, first of all, live in a judicial state. Judicial state meaning that if a homeowner is going to lose their home, they have to be sued by their lender, and then the court case has to go through for them to take the property back. So even if somebody today lost their job, is unable to make payments on it, first of all, they're going to get a forbearance. That's one. Number two, a lot of people that lost their jobs may not get the job in 2-3 months. A lot of the banks, in fact, across the board, are going to work with people. But just please understand, the situation with a lot of Americans, unfortunately, is that a lot of people live hand to mouth, meaning that they may be doing well. They may be making 50, 60, 100, 150,000 bucks, but yet if a paycheck stops, suddenly they're going to have a financial crisis in their home. And there are going to be a lot of people in that situation that make a good living, but yet they may be in sales, they may have been consultants, they may have been employed, a lot of them, and those numbers are going to be high. So what's going to happen is there is going to be a little bit of a delay in terms of these things hitting. Now, you might see things like Texas, you might see California, you might see New York, you might see Florida. Those states may have a dip and may have a foreclosure rate that may spike suddenly at a much faster pace than the Midwest, especially Chicago. In Chicago, on an average, it takes 2 to 5 years to foreclose on a property because we're in a judicial state. So our spikes are going to come a little bit later, and they're going to be lagging indicators. So we're going to talk about the leading and the lagging indicators of this. So I put down some numbers on the board, and I'm going to kind of write down some figures, and hopefully this will make some sense. So the 50,563 and 41,509. What are these numbers? These are numbers from 2019 figures, right? These are numbers. This is the amount of closed properties that existed in 2019 from January 2019 through April 15th of 2019, right? So remember what happened in 2019. A lot of times what happens is the MLS data compares this to this. Well, look at 2019. Today, this is the number closed. This is for 2020, right? This is for 2020. They say, well, the market is good. Everything is great. Guys, remember last year what happened? We had a late and a very, very, very ridiculously cold winter. Remember February last year what happened? I mean, it was cold, colder than Alaska. In Chicago, guess what happens? February, March is when the market starts opening up. A lot of buyers start coming out. So closed figures for April, because properties that will be closing now that were closing, they went into contract 30, 45, 50 days ago. And we had a cold winter snap last year, so the market started a bit late last year. But last year there were 51,000 closed files that basically properties that closed in by April 15th. That's why I'm trying to compare apples to apples. This year, so far, we have had 51,198 properties. Now, in a market as large as Chicago, that number of 1,000 is off. But if you've noticed something curious has happened. Even when the market shut down because of this, right, non-essential activities has been stopped for the last almost a month now, or I should say 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. A lot of smaller sales have gone through. That, which is good news, that people still felt confident. Government sector, they're getting paid. Teachers are getting paid. All the people who are on that sort of a thing are getting paid. A lot of businesses have been kept paying people, but a lot of people have lost their jobs. So if you look at the ratio, and this is important to understand, the ratios of deals that fall apart, right? The ratios of deals that have fallen apart in this period, even though a lot of them have fortunately closed, right? The ratio is about 38% higher than what falls apart in a regular market, 38 to 40%. Now those, I can't give you the exact number because I don't know the exact number. I did it based on how many deals were under contract last year and fell apart versus how many deals were under contract and fell apart this year. That's how I did that number. So it may be a little bit, I may be a little bit off, but you guys get my gist, that many properties have fallen apart. Now, more I feel will, because a lot of people have are losing their jobs or have lost their jobs, and so that's going to affect the market. Now, the numbers here, so these are the closed files on this side. The numbers here are the number of properties that in a market last year, so that went under contract at the same time. And these numbers are kind of inverse, if you notice. The number of closed sales is higher this year so far. The number of properties that went under contract is higher last year. So you may ask, you're like, so Andrew, you just got done saying that, man, in February, we had a cold February. I did say that, right? That we had a cold February, which we did. But last year, what happened was after February, March 15th or so, suddenly that's when the market picks up. So what happened was the number of properties that went under contract in March and April, which is that 1 month period where the activity is very high in the Chicagoland market because of the pent-up demand, suddenly that spiked. So the number of properties that went under contract, the properties that should be going under contract last year was a little bit higher than this year. What I'm really trying to, long-winded way of saying it is this, that I don't think we have seen the real difference in the market yet today. We're going to see that difference in the next few months, but already the cycle has started by having 38% higher number of deals fall apart. 38%, guys, is a huge number in a marketplace, and so it's important to keep a track of that. So what do I mean by, we're going to get into the specifics of what I think we need to go back to, because some of the strategies that were being used in 2008, 2009, and I'll have Rahul chime in and talk about that a little bit, because we need to start, markets are cyclical, right? And we need to stay ahead of the market. If you're somebody that is saying, well, oh my God, there'll be a lot of opportunities on the MLS, there will be a lot of opportunities on the MLS. But keep in mind that outside the MLS, like probate sales, short sales, some of those things, there will be a lot more, because there are a lot of people already in the last 5-6 years that have been buying distressed properties. Guess what the first place they're going to jump on? They're going to jump on the MLS. Right? So MLS prices will stabilize, but outside prices, properties that you don't see, which is the hidden inventory, off-market deals, are going to become critical in today's market. And if you want to take advantage of these things, you got to start thinking about that in the long run. And I know for some people that are listening to this, they're probably, as unfortunate as it is, some people may have lost their jobs. We know of some people that have lost their jobs. Just understand, guys, life has its yins and yangs. Things go up, things come down, people lose jobs, people get jobs. This is not the end all be all, even if it seems like that. Just, we have all at times in our lives been a very tough spot. The good part about today, you know, because we always have to look at the silver lining, because if all it is that everything is over, then it really doesn't matter, right? The good part is this, that from the federal side of it, put all politics aside, put everything aside. From the state side of it, they are going to be forced to do more than they have ever done in history to jumpstart the market. That is the good part of it. There is going to be pain for all of us around the world, not just in America, but as Americans, we enjoy economically the top position. That's just a fact of life, right? So that is a saving grace for all of us. But even for people that have, let's just say somebody had a job loss, somebody had a, you had to basically go on furlough, right? Even then, the opportunity in real estate doesn't change. You can still do wholesales, you can still do flips if you want to. I wouldn't do that. I would suggest that if you're on furlough, if you lost your jobs, just do pure wholesales. You can do extremely well. Don't get yourself, because you lost a job, into a bind with a flip, and any money that you may have a little bit, you go lose that. That is not a wise thing to do, because whenever things go, you know, kind of haywire, what people tend to do is, it's human nature to become desperate, and then you grab for straws. We want you to go after sure shot things. So we'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes. But a couple of things to understand, first of all. First, we said that we're in a judicial state. The timeline of a foreclosure, which there will be foreclosures 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, and we'll talk about why. But that timeline is a 2 to 5 year timeline, and it's very strategic for us as real estate investors. It gives us a lot of advantages compared to most other places, right? But before that, we have to talk about the lagging indicators and the leading indicators. So if you have ever been to one of our 3-day events or within Mastery, we talk about this all the time. Lagging versus leading. So the news media, if you look at the news media, what do they report? They always report the lagging indicators of real estate sales or what's happening in the market. If you see the news now, oh my God, the sales are down, the number of closes are down, blah, blah, that's what they're going to report. That is for them the natural tendency, because the news doesn't report and doesn't think through what's going to happen. Or if they do, then they'll bring a pundit on, this has never happened before. Of course, 2008, it never happened before, right? Clearly, 9/11, it never happened before. History has a way of repeating itself, yet catastrophes and disasters show up in a different form. Katrina in New Orleans, it never happened before. And then you have these people who would have you believe the world is going to come to an end, right? I just happen not to be a believer in these crazy things. Yes, we should be cautious, but we should be cautiously optimistic. So having said that, the lagging indicators, what are those? Lagging indicators are solds, right? Properties that have sold are lagging indicators of knowing what it is. The leading indicators, and this is what all real estate news and reporting is based on. What it should be based on is actives, the properties that are under contract. So you see under contract properties, pending sales, right? And not just the another thing which they report as lagging numbers are foreclosures. And I should say foreclosures or pre-foreclosures would be the right word. Is pre-foreclosures is something that they report. What we have to look at as real estate investors is active properties versus under contract properties versus pending properties. So why? Think about this. The 2008 recession, 2007 recession, 2006 recession, if you were in real estate, I was in real estate at the time, selling real estate, and the numbers were out there even before anybody realized it. Why? Because in 2006, kind of middle of 2006, guess what had happened? The number of properties, active number of properties was increasing, and there was a longer and longer and longer market time that was taking to sell a property, right? The builders noticed it in 1 second, because what happened is for a lot of builders, one fine day in the middle of summer, the buyers just quit showing up, right? The buyers just quit. If you know of any builders that had subdivisions sitting out at that time, one day on an open house when 20, 30, 40 couples would show up, boom, their count of people through their properties just went kaput, it went dead. And because of that, they knew, oh my God, there is something wrong. But what do? They have land bought, they have properties that are up, they have spec homes that are built. They were up the creek without a paddle. Now, of course, the people in the retail sector, the retail side of the market, meaning not the new construction, right? Regular homes, agents, oh, no, this is temporary. This is never going to last. This doesn't make sense. It's the builders that are charging too much. But guess what was happening? Each month, month over month, the number of actives was growing up. The number of properties that were canceled and taken off the market, that kept increasing. Yet the one number kept falling was under contract and pending deals, right? So there's a seasonality in real estate. As we go into July, August, September, October in the Chicago market, I'm talking about Chicago market, the number of pendings and under contracts relatively goes down. Obviously in winter it's low. You would think in the middle of July, August, September, there would be more sales. They're not. I don't know why it is that way. That's just how it is in Chicago. And the prices start cooling down. This is every single year. This has happened all the way from 2007. It has happened. And yet you come into February, end of February, even when it's still a little cold, people start seeing hopes of spring. That's when the market spikes. And what was happening was middle of year, the market goes dead, and these numbers are going down. The number of actives is going up. The number of properties that basically went off the market where people are not renewing them because the properties are not selling starts skyrocketing. Guess what? The news media still is reporting, oh my God, all these crazy sales. What they were reporting was they were reporting 40, 60, 80 days behind because they were reporting properties that had gone under contract and that were closing. Yet the market had started accumulating a huge inventory. See, if you keep buying stuff at a store, it's not selling, it's not going out the front door. If you keep bringing in stuff from the back door, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have an overload of inventory. Now, another thing that started happening, which people don't pay attention to, people look at the pre-foreclosures, which is fine, which is good. But what you have to start looking at is this, is the credit defaults. Meaning in our business, that means how many people are 30, 60, 90 days late. That is important, and that is going to be very, very, very relevant for us now, because we're seeing this time. We have time to prepare, because guess what? A lot of people are going to go ask for forbearance, meaning, hey, I can't pay today, or I may not be able to pay. Give me 3 months, 6 months. Guess what they're doing right now? They're giving you 3 months. In 3 months, you need to pay the entire amount of that, the 3 months that you've not paid, and you need to make your 4th month's payment, right? So people who may not have the money, they may have, say, 2, 3 rentals, 4 rentals, they get some of it, they ask for forbearance, now they have to use that money to live on. Guess what's going to happen in month 4? Even if they collect 100% of the rent, they're probably going to fall behind because they don't have a job, they have other circumstances that were caused because of this COVID. And what it's going to have is it's going to have a chain reaction. But because the banks are going to give everybody 3 months, it's going to get, the can is going to get kicked down the road. And then they're going to probably give people, this is not something that has officially come out, we have heard rumors of this, and I bet you this will come out. They're probably going to give most homeowners or investors that have Fannie and Freddie loans, at least minimum Fannie and Freddie loans. I believe this will 100% happen. This is my belief. I'm not saying I know that for sure. This is my belief system, is it will happen even for commercial loans, that it's going to get kicked out, where if you can't pay, they'll let you make partial payments, they'll let you do things for a year. But still, because of the amount of job loss, because of the amount of stress that is created, it may start 6 months from now, it may start 8 months from now, suddenly you'll see this wave, right, of properties. And this time, the hedge funds are not coming back on the buy side of it. They're going to come back again on the finance side of it, meaning that they're going to want to finance your deals, but they're not going to want to finance your deals for fix and flip. So this is something to pay attention to. They will finance your deals for rentals, because what they've realized throughout this period, that rentals are more stable. This is something we've been tooting this horn for the last 8 to 10 years, that guys, listen, if you want to do flips, do small flips. Flip them out, do in high volume, get out of it, take a profit and get out. Don't do big flips, because they are sticky. If you get stuck in it, it takes a toll financially and can wipe you out. So what that means is, now what we have to look at is the 30, 60, and 90-day lates that are put out by TransUnion, that are put out by Experian, because those are the first guys that know. You get a 3-month hold. After that, you request more time. But there's going to come a time when people are going to start getting 30 days late, 60 days late, 90 days late. That data is not reported because a pre-foreclosure has not been filed yet. There's time. It takes a little bit of time, and I'll draw a timeline out, because that is going to take a little bit of time. So what do we do after this, and what happens? So let me kind of describe that. So there are basic obvious places, right? You buy a property on the MLS. That's where most people buy properties. Yet besides that, you have properties that go to sheriff auctions. This is not the online auction. This is sheriff auction. There are properties that are going to be your probate deals. There are going to be properties that are going to be pre-foreclosures that are not listed. This is kind of interesting. Last year at this same time, right? Last year at the same time, if we had this conversation at Chicago RIA, the number of pre-foreclosures going into this, right? Not before, going into this whole mess in 2020. This year was almost 40,000 pre-foreclosures. Think about this. Last year at the same time, that number was close to 18,000. So in 2019, that same time, right? 2019, there were about 18 to 19,000 pre-foreclosures. This year, even before all of this happened, right? 2020, there were close to 39,000 pre-foreclosures. Now this mess hits. What do you think is going to happen? This number is going to go up, or is this number going to go down? Some of this number is going to basically stay kind of stagnant because the foreclosure courts are closed, right? So they're going to stay stagnant. Some of the people that are here, they're going to probably, if they're smart, they will buy themselves additional time because some of them are going to use COVID as an excuse. I'm not saying they should. I'm not judging anybody on this. I'm just telling you the reality of the real estate market, right? And then this number will spike, not if, ands, or buts. It will spike, guaranteed 100%. So think about what happened in 2008, 2009. This number was close to, at a time, 60, 70, 80,000 pre-foreclosures. The world didn't come to an end. It gave an opportunity for you and I, right? Yet of that, on the MLS, of the properties that were distressed, only 2,500 to 3,000 properties were available, because a lot of people today that are going to face distress, guess what they're going to do? They're going to try to list their house on the MLS and sell it, so the number of properties on the MLS is bound to go up. It's not whether the prices will get corrected or not. 100% they will get corrected. It's not that, and the question becomes is, well, how much do you think they're going to come down? Nobody knows, guys. Any of the pundits on TV, none of them know. The question is not how much are they going to come down. The question is, can you take advantage of it? And that is something is what we need to worry about, not about whether it's going to come down or not. What do you think is going to happen? Doesn't matter how much money they put in the system. So what happens is that this becomes relevant suddenly again. Now, in 2008 and 9, what happened was that you didn't even have to go to the auctions yet. You could buy properties in MLS. But by the time everybody started buying properties in the MLS and started making multiple offers, if you were a smart investor, if you were ahead of the curve, in 2010, what we started doing was we already moved to the auctions. Why? Because that was ahead of the curve. See, if you stay where most people are, and you're not ahead of them, 10 steps, 5, 6, 7 steps ahead of them, what's going to happen is you're going to be a part of the market, meaning you will pay the market price at that time. The point of investing is we want to stay a little bit ahead. So 2 or 3 things become very relevant. Number one, how to do pre-foreclosures. And I'll show you some of those numbers on my screen and some of the way you should start thinking about it. Even, I'm not saying you do this today, but in the very, very, very near future, this is something, if you want to take advantage of real estate, you should really start thinking about. Because as the market corrects, it'll open up a lot of opportunity. The question is, do you know how to use it, right? So pre-foreclosures will be very relevant. One thing that I have never believed in, this till now, will become very, very relevant, and I've been 100% against it, and that is owner finance deals, right? So owner finance. Why do I say that, right? And there's a method to this madness. Think about this. Till now, and this has been throughout history, since the 70s, what people said is no money down. If you have heard about this book that was written by Robert Allen, right? Robert Allen wrote this famous book. It's a very, very, very famous book that was written at the time. It's called No Money Down, right? And most of the properties that were bought with lease purchases. They were bought with owner finance, or bought with different techniques. The problem with the owner finance technique was this. This is the dirty little secret. What nobody said was, why does somebody do an owner finance on a property? Think about it. Most of the times is not because they're stupid. Most of the times they do an owner finance on a property because, number one, it's a headache property. More importantly, they're not willing to reduce the price, right? That's why they're doing owner financing, because otherwise they could reduce the price, stick the property on the MLS, and at the right price, it will sell. But what a lot of times on owner finance people do is You can buy a property from people even today, right, as an owner finance. But if you can't work out a ridiculously good price, why do I care what the terms are? So I'll give you an example. In 2007, 8, 9, 10, people kept telling me, Andrew, why not just go buy a property from owner finance? I'm like, listen, I'll buy it with an owner financing, but I'm not willing to buy it at the price that you're buying it for. You're buying that same property for 160, 170, same exact property down the street. I'm buying it for 70,000. But they're like, but we didn't put any money in. We just took over their payments. I'm like, listen, man, that is stupid. The reason it is stupid is because it's the same property. They're like, but this property doesn't need much work. The property you bought needs work. I'm like, I agree. But think about this, right? You're buying a property with 170 owed. I'm buying the same property with 70 at the foreclosure. So even if I have to do 20 in work and 10 in carrying cost, my cost for the property is $100,000. Your cost for the property is 170, and the market is at 140. I'm all in for this. Market is at 140. You're buying the property. It's upside down at 170 just for the sake because it's owner finance. You didn't have to put money out of pocket. That is not called smart. That is called putting yourself behind on the financial equation. And the reason why I have been against it 100%, the point of all of us as real estate investors is not just to buy a property for the sake of buying a damn property. Our point is we buy properties that are good deals. That is investing, right? Just buying something for the sake of it is called stupidity. Investing means you buy something at a great price where even if the market goes sideways, still you are financially okay. So why is owner finance going to be a big opportunity now, right? So if you think about it this way, there's a lot of people right now that because these crises are going to come into a financial mess. And there's a lot of people that are sitting on vacant properties, that are sitting on properties where they really can't do a whole bunch with. They're kind of in a pinch, in a bind. This is an artificial period that came about because of this crazy virus, right? What happens is this, in a market like today, on properties that have high equities and that are vacant, this is important. You can't go chase somebody that has a ridiculous mortgage on it. Then do a short sale, right? Then don't go chase them. But there are a lot of people that are sitting on properties that are vacant that have a lot of equity. You can get an owner finance on them at a great price, and their payments are being made every month. They're making money. You can rent out that property, and it is an incredible deal for you, and their headache is gone, right? It becomes a unique time in history when you can do this where the numbers will make sense. See, a lot of times in real estate, why do real estate people fail? Real estate people fail not because there's basically they want to fail. See, they fail because what they do is they learn one strategy. Well, I do owner finance. Well, why? Well, you know, I don't have to put money out of pocket. Well, but hold on. Just because you don't have to put money out of pocket, it makes no sense to do owner finance. If you don't buy properties with huge amount of equity, you're ending up with properties that are upside down. If you lose 1 month of rent, 2 months of rent, guess what happened to a ton of people that had done owner finance in the Chicagoland area? A ton of them went under. They couldn't, as the market kept going down, they couldn't carry properties. So think about it, right? They had bought a property at 170. The market went down all the way to 120, 130. It had to come back up. And if they didn't have the wherewithal to carry the property as the market corrected itself, guess what happened? They themselves became a part of the statistic. The point for us is not just to take one strategy and use it all the time. The point as a real estate investor is to understand the basics, which is all in cost in a property, and then use strategies that are the best in that moment in time. So what happened was in 2010, we started doing auctions, right? A lot of our purchases were auctions. By the time everybody realized that auctions were good, that was 2012. bunch of new investors jump into the auctions, making all kinds of mistakes, overpaying for properties, because now they think that is the secret. By that time, guess what we had done? We had gone to off-market short sales that were not on the MLS. The point what I'm trying to get across is you have to stay ahead of the curve, because otherwise you will be a part of the market. So I'm going to see if Rahul is available. I'm going to have him jump in, talking a little bit about kind of the times of 2010, buying properties at the auction, because at that time it was scary for us, right? Because we didn't know as much. There was nobody that was willing to give the information. So Rahul, you want to kind of jump in what was going on in 2008, even in, say, let's take DuPage County, or because Cook County is more complicated. What was the scenario like? Because those things will come up again now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, again, this is Rahul Visal. If a lot of people are new here, Chicago RIA, we started RIA back in 14, and we have over 6,000, 7,000 member now. I started investing with Andrew back in 2011. I used to work in a corporate career, work for Caterpillar, and I was thinking about investing. And this is exactly the time where people were running away from the market. What happened back in 2008 is bunch of properties were under foreclosure, and the word on the street was real estate is not good, or real estate is not going anywhere. What is happening due to this virus? I think if you give another 4 to 6 weeks, and if this continues, it's going to repeat the same history. It's actually correcting market, and for investors, to be honest, this is a great time. This is a great opportunity. From looking from the investor side of it, from looking from a rental or a home owner side of it, it's a different situation. But if I want to buy more properties, this is the right time. So going back to 2010, 2011, financing was very difficult. There's so many properties out there. There are a lot of vacant properties. People were out of the properties, and properties were just on the market, but the cash was not there. And why cash was not there? As a lot of the investment properties were not funded by the hedge funds. What happened since 2011 through 2020 now, up to first like 3 or 4 years, 11, 12, 13, 14, most of the banks or most of the hedge funds were stayed away from the properties, because they thought it was a very risky investment, and the funding was not out there. When we started working, and we started working in DuPage County that time, it was I used to live in Hanover Park, and Andrew was used to in Bartlett, and we used to work through Roselle office. So our main area which we are focusing on was the DuPage County. And in DuPage County, we started picking up properties on auction, where people were just not there. There was less competition. People were outside because there was lack of money, lack of confidence, lack of knowledge. And to be honest, that same condition might come in the next few months. You want me to cover more like a financing part of it, or what was the?
No, so I want to give an example, and then I want to talk about a little bit of the kind of the action steps to look at and keep an eye on right away, because what we want to talk about is what obviously is happening, everybody's aware of, and then what next, right? What is some of the key things that you have to think about in terms of if you want to do wholesales, or if you want to do some of these owner finance properties, or some of these pre-foreclosures, going out of this as we start, kind of trying to stabilize the economy. You'll hear a ton of talk. So in Rahul's example, in 2011, February, if I remember correctly, he bought his first house ever, right? This is kind of the bottom of the market. That's when he buys a couple rental properties, right? Starting from that time all the way, if you look at today, right, with hundreds of rental properties, a bunch of them that are paid off, hundreds of flips done, hundreds of wholesales done, right? This is what it does, is this sort of a market opens up opportunities where an average person can step into it if they understand the finances behind it. So I'm going to show you an example of it on a owner finance example, right? And hopefully this will make sense. So the other day, I got a call from somebody that had a property, and the property is listed in the MLS. Property is listed in MLS for 179. And this particular person is a investor, is a person who had invested in real estate for a long time, and he had 2 properties left. One property he was living in, another property was this one, right? The property has some issues in terms of that need to be corrected. Without that, the property will not sell. There's a little bit of water coming in. House is about 60, 65 years old, right? Excellent area, will rent hand over fist, right? I mean, there's not even a question about it. Now think about the market we're in today, right? At that price, the retail price of that property fixed up is about, say, 220 is the retail price of that property. For us in this particular thing, it's just not enough margin. I mean, this is like peanuts. We wouldn't get out of bed for this. But when I talk to the person, I'm like, listen, I'm not really too keen on looking at the property because the numbers you're asking make no sense, right? For me, investments wise, it makes no sense. But he's like, well, make an offer. If it's something reasonable, I'll work with it. So my first question to the person was, do you owe anything on the property? No, don't owe anything. Well, do you need the money? No, I don't need the money necessarily. What I don't need is the damn headache. The property's sitting vacant, I don't need the headache. And I'm not willing to do the work needed to go even rent out the property. Like, okay. So I went, looked at the property. And what I said to them was this: I can basically make you an offer on the property for 110. At 110, we will take over the property for 2 years, and every single month, based on the taxes, based on the properties in Chicago, based on everything, we'll make you a payment on the property of $1,100 starting today. Even though the property is not rented right now, it needs work, right? $1,100. I'm like, think about it, man. On 110 price, it's a phenomenal return any which way you look at it, because you're not doing anything with it. Now, mind you, that means that they have to keep the taxes current. And I said, we're going to keep the taxes current. You're not, because if I give him the money, he doesn't keep the taxes current. Now it becomes my headache. So that's a little bit more sophisticated. I'm not going to get into it. But basically what we said is that Fidelity is going to keep your taxes current, and I'm going to be named insured on it so that I know the insurance is kept current also. There's no mortgage on it. So that part of it. So basically we're almost doing kind of a quasi, say a land contract, to say the least, if some of you guys understand that. It's kind of a hybrid in between. And then I said, in 2 years from now, guaranteed we'll buy the property. Think about why that process came. Number one, I wanted to buy the property with a lot of equity, because what had happened was this person had 6 contracts on the property. All 6 of them fell through because there's water coming in the house. And it's not like there's this much water, but whenever it rains, it comes in. There's a crack, and part of that thing has settled a little bit. It's not bad at all. As is, we can rent it out just by correcting the water. But when we fix it, we're going to do it properly. So for us to do it properly, it's going to end up costing us a little bit of money, right? But today, what is going to be the next challenge that's going to come because of this whole thing? The next challenge that is going to come is that refinancing a property is going to be a little bit more difficult than it was just literally 30 days ago, right? It's just a fact of life. So now what I did was I basically bought time. In the next couple of months, I can fix the property. The cost of it is going to be what it's going to be to us, but yet we don't have to put out the $110,000 out of pocket, right? They're going to carry the thing, and anytime within the next 2 years, we can refinance it. Now the property is ours. We pay them their $110,000. They're gone, right? So it's a hybrid owner finance deal. And guess what? On the back end, the property is worth gold once we fix that issue. And this is a property that in that particular area, every single month, all day long, we'll rent for $1,750, if not higher. So as soon as you get the property rented, let's just say it takes 60 days. Let's say it takes 90 days to get it done. Every single month, you have a delta of about $600 to $650 every single month. The property is bought for a great price. Now, what if the market slips? Let's say the market slips, right? You have a 10%, 15% correction in the market. Okay, the price comes down to 190. Still, what is important is what is my basis in the property? My basis is 110,000 plus 20, excellent part of Chicago, very desirable area, very, very strong rents. The 6 of the properties that have been rented right in that area. The least, the one that was the cheapest was as $1,850 at $1,850. And I'm saying I can rent it for $1,750, right? It's an incredible opportunity. She's like, you know, if all of this wasn't going on, I would never consider it. But having said this, suddenly what happens is whenever there's an artificial pressure, this whole situation is an artificial pressure nobody can control. None of us can control it. Yet, because of that, there are opportunities that come up because of it. Because right now, she's basically either has to sit on the property or give it to somebody like us. And I'm like, even if I'm going to buy it, I don't want to take it on and then have to suddenly scramble to go get a refi. If I can put off the refi for a few months, even for a year, year and a half, who cares? A year and a half, we'll get it refinanced, give her the rest of the money, and we're good to go. And that is a change that you will suddenly see in the market. What I would do is this. If you're looking for properties, especially a lot of them that are expired, that are properties that have gone off the market, this would be a great time to go back to them and lower your offer. We did that on a bunch of properties we had looked at last month that we would have bought off-market properties. If last month I was willing to pay 95 for this property, today I'm only willing to pay 80. Take it or leave it, or even 75 for it. Why? Because people are like, well, I'm not going to sell it. Well, you don't have to. There are 10 other people that will want to sell their properties. Why? Because they're desperate. I mean, that's just what it is. It's real estate 101 at its best. So what I would look at is this, going out of this, is number one, right now they're giving you a 3-month forbearance. That's what they're doing. Okay, they're going to at some point extend this to a year for people who need it. That's just a fact of life. That's just how they're going to do that, right? So what's going to happen is a lot of people that were doing flips suddenly in a market like today, the auctions, for people who were doing flips, for those people that have properties that are stuck, especially people who have bigger properties, all the mom and pop investors, I guarantee you, are gone because they're stuck on one property, they can't do more. And those people that were very optimistic, they're going to get depressed because all the way from Lima to everybody that was in that financing thing that were doing flip financing, they're going to disappear for a few months for sure, right? They're not coming back that quickly yet. So what it does is if your flip people disappear, it makes it really good for us in general to buy properties that we can wholesale out or to buy properties at good quality rentals. Because the current crises that we're facing, this was not a mortgage crisis, this wasn't a financial crisis, this was because of a virus. What's the one thing they said? Shelter in place, meaning, hey, find a house, live there, stay there, social distance. It always goes back. Whenever there is any sort of a crisis of any kind, it's stay in place in different ways. It's not said the way it's said now, but it's small properties always make sense. So the first place what I would look at all the properties that are currently in short sale or pre-foreclosure. So I'm going to switch to my computer screen, and I'm going to shut this off because so you can concentrate on the computer screen. So if you go to say something like Chicago Deal Vault, right? What you will notice is this, so I have this page open, which is the number of pre-foreclosures. Let me also open the number of probates here in another tab. Here we go. So right now it's showing 19,000 probates, right, that are available in the Chicagoland. The properties that have come up as probates in the last 6 months is the only ones I would look at. So what I would do is I would go here and go back to the filing date, and I would go back to about, say, October. I'm saying October or November, whatever you want to use that as your filing date. and till today. Now, just keep in mind that a lot of these, and then I would go put yes, and I would do search, right? And what it'll do is it'll dwindle this number down, right? It'll dwindle the number down to quite a bit lower number. So every month in a regular time period, what happens is about 300 to 400 new probate cases come up. Out of those, right? So if I removed real estate, so a lot of times what people will do is they chase all properties. It doesn't matter if it has any real estate attached to it or not. I want properties that have real estate only. So that number is 1,500. There's a lot more cases, right? Only about 40% of all probate cases have real estate attached to it. So I would go after the ones that have real estate attached, and there's 1,500 of them. There's a lot more of them that are going to come up, obviously, because the last month or so almost, and it's going to continue for another month, that these cases are not being filed because the court system is closed and so on and so forth, right? So there's going to be a delay. But this number, you will see within the next 60 days, 90 days, this number will jump as soon as the foreclosure, as soon as the court system opens. So this is the first place that I feel that you should go. Is the first place to look at would be, in terms of importance, would be probate deals, right? Because probates will open up and they're the easiest and the most profitable to go after. Number one will be probates. Number two are going to be the pre-foreclosures, and the number of foreclosures is not going to necessarily go up, but the properties that are foreclosures currently, right? This is important to keep in mind, because one person will say, "Well, Andrew, people that are currently in pre-foreclosures, the court system is closed, why would they hurry up and sell the property?" Here's the reason, right? What happens is an artificial distress, not artificial, in this case, it's a real distress outside, will create a real distress in their minds. It's just a fact, right? And because of that, what's going to happen is a lot of people that have not been doing anything, they will want to do something, especially the ones that have equity, right? This is something kind of weird, and a lot of times people don't think about it. People think people only lose properties when they don't have equity. So what is a pre-foreclosure? Pre-foreclosure is somebody that they haven't made payments on the property, and the bank has started the foreclosure process. That's a pre-foreclosure, right? So if we look at, if I look at my screen, so everybody should be able to see my screen, and you look at the number of cases that are pre-foreclosures, so that number is here. Total results is 39,860 pre-foreclosures. So what happens is, in a market like today, what will happen is, out of that, there are a lot of people that have a good amount of equity. People who have a lot of good amount of equity, what they're going to do is they're going to panic, because some of them clearly, they were already in financial distress. Maybe the husband lost a job, wife lost a job, there was a sickness in the family, something happened that is putting them in a financial bind. What do you think at events like this, when you shut down everything, what do you think that does? It's impossible to put, to keep people moving ahead. It's going to put them further behind, because these were people that were already in distress. So that in itself creates a huge opportunity. So if I go to my screen and I put, so I'm showing you guys my screen. So what it does is it gives you Cook County, DuPage County. You can search it down by that, or you can basically go and say, okay, who are the people who have 50% or more equity in the Chicagoland area? Give me all the list of those, right? And what it'll do is, and you'll be shocked, right? That 10% of people, and it's still a big number, it's 4341. 10% of people have more than 50% equity in the property. Think about that. Why are they not just sticking the property on the MLS and just selling it? The reason is this: they're in distress. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do, and they freeze. And this happens all the time. That number is going to go up, and those people are the most motivated people. First, I would go after probates. Second, I would go after people that have high equity, EQ. And then if you're somebody that says, hey, I got furloughed, I got a job loss, today I would not, this is just my suggestion, right? Because there's going to be a bunch of people, you'll see a bunch of seminars, oh, now is the perfect time to do a flip. I mean, are you crazy? Why would you want to do a flip? Why would you want to carry a property in times like this? Because the next 6, 8, 10 months, 12 months, and in November, we have elections. I don't care if you're a Democrat, left wing, if you're a Republican or a Republican right winger. It really doesn't make any difference. The news media, the politicians, they're all going to create a mayhem. And they're going to make any ridiculous statements which is going to create distress and distrust and fear amongst the general public. That's what happens at an election. That's how nowadays it's not, it's become divide and rule rather than unite and conquer. That's just kind of how, that's the society we live in. And it is good for us because that affects the market, that affects the mood of the people. So this year, not only do we have to overcome this, we have to deal with another damn election, and that's going to create more problems. So I would not be doing flips at all whatsoever, period, if I can avoid it. But there is a good group of investors, there's a huge group of investors that will come running back to the market because they will realize that they have taken a beating a lot of other places and the money will look for a place to go. I would take these properties that are high equity pre-foreclosures, and these properties make for great rentals in the small price range, and they make for great wholesales. And this is just my suggestion because I've always been very conservative in my approach. I would not do any property, I wouldn't even go look at it if the property is not below 350. I would not go the back end value I'm talking about ARVs. Now, if you're in a market like say Naperville, if you're in a market like some of the A markets, the more aspirational, the more affluent markets, right? Then it's different. You can go up to about 450, it's okay. You're in Northbrook, that's okay. But in most other bread and butter markets around Chicagoland area, I would not go, and I would not go and do even wholesales. The other thing is we divide the markets into 4 parts: aspirational or affluent, B is bread and butter, basically the market which is kind of average market, C is some markets with a challenge, and then D are markets that have a lot of challenges that are disasters. Too many challenges makes it a disaster. If you're doing flips in a C market, right, you need to watch it very, very, very carefully. Why? Because some of those C markets are going to do well if the people that are living there, depending on the types of jobs they have, right? Some of the markets that we categorize as B minus C markets, south suburbs of Chicago, right? Some of them are really doing well, especially if they're a part of the essential services. People who are truckers, people who are fortunately with this sort of a shutdown, they're doing well because they're in high demand, they've kept jobs, they have overtime, they have a lot of other things that they're able to, still the income is coming in. So financially, they haven't faced a distress. So it becomes really, really important. But if you're doing flips in a market which is a D market, where who are the people who first lose their jobs? People lose their jobs, people who are in the most economic distress are the people who are on the lower financial rung. So the first place I would go back to is probates. Probates right now, as we speak, even with the shutdown, all the calls we're getting on probate deals, people are exceptionally motivated because they are scared, right? They don't want to deal with this mess. They're scared, so they want their property sold, or they want their loved ones that passed away, whatever happened previously. The relatives are kind of in this mess, and they're like, okay, we're getting rid of the properties. The second place is high equity properties would be the second place I would look at right away. The third place is short sales. Properties that are, if you do not know how to do a short sale, right? Call Gina's office, call Gina Diaz. She happens to be from Mastery, does a ton of short sales, right? Even if there's a property that you have where you're going to feel, oh my God, if this doesn't end quickly, I'm going to face an issue. So then you can reach out to her and she can help you with that. That's what she does. But that would be a great place. That would be the third place to get to. And short sales is something we're going to do a separate presentation on short sales, on how to deal with it, how to talk to people. We were just waiting so that this kind of the immediate emergency that we had was over before we start really going after that. But those are the top three places. For those of you that are really sophisticated, that know what you're doing, sheriff sale auctions would be a great place to go to. And once this crisis is a little kind of off, of course, online auctions and MLS, a lot of the properties that are bank-owned properties, you will see them that they will suddenly become a lot more amenable to deal with you. But the strategy in today's market, I would use is small properties, long-term hold rentals, or wholesale out. Do not carry properties for flips at least for the next 6 to 8 months. Let the markets stabilize, let the mayhem settle out a little bit, and then you start going back into the market will stabilize. It's just the nature of the beast, right? Whatever comes down has to go up. Whatever goes up has to come down. It's just how it works. But I would use these three strategies, and the thing I would keep an eye on are things which is number of actives, number of properties that are going under contract, number of properties that are being sold, and the number of properties that are being taken off, and most importantly, how many people have 30, 90, 30, 60, 90-day default. The natural default rate, which is considered kind of normal, is somewhere around 0.8, 0.9, 1.1, somewhere around that percent. Meaning, out of 100 homes, one property is approximately in default out of every 100 homes, right? But you're going to see that this is going to be a little bit different than the past because there's going to be a pause. There's going to be a 90-day pause. That pause may be extended for about 6 months or a year before the numbers will climb. So if you're buying a property today, then you want to make sure you clean that inventory out within the next couple months, because 3 months from now, when the market, when these forbearances are over, guess what's going to happen? At that time, there will be a lot of people that may just say, hey, listen, I'm not doing anything because I know I don't have a job, I'm financially not in a position, and I'm going to let the property go. That's just what it is. And so suddenly, right now it may be stable, but right after the election, sometime around that time, or next year this time, the prices may drop at that time because that's where the real market will settle in. Right now, we're going to be in this temporary artificial phase where they're going to keep pumping the economy with lots of different types of stimulus, different types of checks, different types of things. Rahul, anything in the end that you want to add?
Yeah, so I agree with exactly what you're saying. I was going to say the same thing about the looking at the properties. One of the great indicators, if you're already in the market and if you have portfolio, if you have relationships with small banks, big banks, you should start talking with those guys because those guys are going to get a first indication of who's falling behind, who wants to get rid of the properties. And Andrew is right. A lot of our properties right now, I'm doing a lot of calls to all these loan programs. Everyone is giving us a forbearance for 3 months. So the July is the month when we expected to pay these 3 months, which were not deferred, but it's just you're not paying anything for next 3 months. And end of the 3 months, you're going to pay all the 3 months of the mortgage payments. And that lump sum amount is going to hit you. They might give you more programs, more options, but then you have to qualify for that. And the people who are short or the onesie twosie or the small landlords or people who have properties on a flip which never sold in these 3 months, they're going to get into trouble and they will be trying to get rid of those properties. And that time you need to preserve your capital and get those properties under contract. But right now, for those 2-3 months, I think exit strategy is the big thing. So just don't get into properties which are just the normal numbers because this is going to reset the market a little bit. Right now, you might get the appraisals on the properties, but 3 months down the line, market is going to reset a little bit. So you need to be more conservative on your numbers. Like Andrew was saying, if you're offering 90.95 before the virus started, now it is 80 or it is less than that. So that's where you need to start making your steps and making the numbers a little bit more profitable for somebody who has knowledge and somebody who has the some money on hand. So preservation of capital is what is required at this stage of the game.
And guys, for those people that have, because there's a ton of people, there's I think over 250 people that are 250 people that are brand new besides the rest, right? If you haven't heard this, when we said this, there are three basic types of loans that are available in the marketplace. You have the residential loan, which is a Fannie or Freddie. You have you have your commercial loan, which is from the hedge funds. These guys did the fix and flip loans. These guys did the rental loans, especially for rental loans. And then you have the commercial loans that are from small portfolio lenders, right? And what we've been saying is, if it's a Fannie Freddie loan, ask for a forbearance, right? That's something that you want to ask for forbearance for. If it's a commercial hedge fund loan, ask for a forbearance right away. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't hurt your credit. It doesn't hurt anything. Just keep in mind that while you are doing a forbearance, it will report as paid, agreed as paid on your credit, which is exactly the same as before. Nothing changes on there at all, right? So this is important because it doesn't affect you in any way. But 3 months from now, those payments are going to come due, right? If for some reason you cannot pay at that point, you can always ask them for a little bit more term, but just please make sure you keep communicating with your bank. The people that we do not want to do these forbearances, and sometimes what you have to think about is this. You have to strategically, as a real estate investor, think about, we want to be honest, we want to pay. But what you want to think about is that, hey, I may not have a problem today, but what about 2 months from now? What about 3 months from now? What about 4 months from now? I need to plan for that so that I want to keep myself out of the red, always want to be in the black, right? So in that thing, even for us, even though we can make payments, if we collect less rent, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But if we have those cash reserves sitting in a position in a time like today, your cash reserves, he who has the cash is the king, right? That's just how this works. So make sure you keep your cash reserves as healthy as humanly possible. And that's why if you take forbearances on here, then you want to make sure whenever they come due, even at that time, if you ask for extension, as long as it does not hurt your credit. Right now, the way it's being done, it doesn't hurt your credit. You don't get harmed in any way. You're totally, totally good. So there's nothing wrong doing those, but in the long run. And then the reason why we're suggesting that don't do a forbearance with small banks, because small banks are the ones now in a time like this. These are the ones we started with in 2011, 12, 13, 14. And these are the banks now that will still continue to do your rental properties. And some of them will do even fix and flips. Some of them even were doing new construction. I think new construction is going to be tough at this point, but at least those two, fix and flips, rentals for sure. So those are the ones, because let's say if we have, like in Rahul's case, the other day I was saying, you have 60, 70 loans, 80 loans here, you have 80 loans here, you have 40 loans here. So if these are basically on a forbearance for 3-4 months, right? These are on 3-4 months, you're fine. You can make payments on everything. There's no issue. There's a bunch of reserves in the bank, but then these you keep current, because guess what? For the next 5-6 months, 8 months, maybe a year, these are the banks that are going to continue to do more loans. So it's important that you keep these relationships with small credit unions, with small places. If you don't have an account at some of these small banks, right? That's where probably one of the mistakes that I made early on. I had a bank account, US Bank. The US Bank is a humongous bajillion-dollar bank. Doesn't matter if you have a few $1 million even over there. They don't care about you. They can't come up with programs for you. But with small banks, it is important, because we had Joe, we did a call last week, webinar. It was called In the Banker's Mind or something, Inside a Banker's Mind. And we had Joe who is one of our commercial bankers, one of the small bankers that we have. And he's like, yeah, man, we want to do loans all day long. And guess what? These people are gone. These people will still do loans, but you can have a forbearance here and still they will continue to do loans, right? You can do up to 10 loans. Typically 7 or 8 is where they will stop, they'll stop you. So this should be 8. This should be, you can have hundreds of loans over there. So hopefully some of these thoughts make sense. We are going to come back and do a in-depth kind of dive into probate, since it's so appropriate at this point. Those deals are coming up like they're going out of style, guys, already. So please, probate properties and vacant properties, there's a list of vacant properties also that is here. It gives you all the properties that are vacant. Now, mind you, these lists typically are updated 4 to 5 times a week. Right now, they're all on a 2-3 week hold delay because the courts are closed, everything is closed. So as soon as all that opens, this will start getting renewed again and everything will start catching up. So this is something important. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the webinar, some of the thoughts. If you guys are new, again, welcome to Chicago RIA. Stay abreast, like us on Facebook, show the support from our end. We will continue doing as many relevant things as possible. Thanks a bunch, Rahul. Thank you for participating, and everybody have a good day.